I didn't know it was going to be so extensive, but my passion really is in 18th century history, especially here locally. So I'll give a little bit of context to what you've already heard. The little-known but important battle that we're talking about here, the Battle of Minisink, was a skirmish between the local militiamen from Orange County against Joseph Brant, a Mohawk chief who was captain in the British Army. With less than 100 men, Brant led his force of Loyalist and Iroquois raiders, first to attack the settlement near Fort Decker, and then along the Delaware River into Sullivan County. When news of the attack reached Goshen, the locals formed a group of about 120, and under the command of Colonel John Hathorne at Warwick, they marched in pursuit of Brant. When they reached Brant's army at Minisink Ford, they split into two groups to attack, but were outflanked. Colonel Hathorne was unable to gather his scattered forces, leaving the Goshen men surrounded and outnumbered. After hours of gunfire, the battle devolved into hand-to-hand combat, leaving dozens of the militiamen dead. More than 2 centuries later, we're gathered here to remember our neighbors in time and place who gave their lives in the struggle for American independence. In fact, these men and their fate were part of a larger context of war, which saw the Army washing back and forth across this county throughout the years of the Revolutionary War. At the beginning of the American Revolution, the Six Nations aligned themselves with the British Loyalists. There was a precedent for this decision, as in the years before the war broke out, they had made a treaty with the British government through Indian agent Sir William Johnson to recapture forts from the French. Another element of this is that Sir William was married to a Mohawk woman whose brother was Joseph Brant. Now, with Americans striving for independence from the Crown, the Six Nations saw this alliance as a way to prevent the Western expansion by colonists. As early as 1777, Brant began attacks on the frontier settlements. Soon after, New York State Governor George Clinton, who's also born here in Orange County, the local, he sent allies to pursue the natives to switch sides. By May of 1778, the burning of homes and barns and stealing of crops had extended close to Albany in the north and as far south as the Susquehanna River Valley in Pennsylvania. The Continental Army realized that it was necessary to position a special force to deal with these attacks on the settlers and their farms, especially because the farms were needed to supply the food to the regular army. In 1779, Washington ordered a third of the American army, 3,500 men, to head to this front. General John Sullivan was appointed the head of the expedition with General James Clinton. James was the brother of George Clinton, the governor, in charge of the northern component. The largest engagement of this campaign was at Newtown. The defeat broke the morale of the Six Nations and ended their advances to the east. During the next month, Sullivan and Clinton's forces led a scorched earth tactic which destroyed 40 Indian villages and eliminated their supply houses. The actions of Brant during July of 1779, including the Battle of Minisink, was part of this larger strategy to attempt to disrupt the actions of the regular army under Sullivan as he attacked Iroquois villages on the western frontier. Throughout the war, Orange County was at the crossroads. With the British having the advantage of a superior navy, the Americans were forced to find transport roads at a safe distance inland. This meant that the main thoroughfare from Boston to Philadelphia followed roughly the same passes where I-84 and I-87 lie today. Orange County residents hosted General Gates, Greene, Knox, Arnold, Colonel Pickering, Dr. Cochran, Colonel Hamilton, General von Steuben, George and Martha Washington, as well as many, many other very important officers of the Revolution. They helped to provision the army at West Point, New Windsor, and Fishkill, sometimes amounting 10,000 soldiers and camp followers at once. The main theater of war moved to the Hudson Valley at numerous times before and after the incident at Minisink. In 1777, before they were focused on the frontier, the Clinton brothers, James and George, had defended the twin forts at Fort Montgomery. The river was miraculously held at that time because the Battle of Saratoga prevented the British from amassing a force large enough to occupy the valley. And after the Battle of Minisink, George Washington was headquartered at the Ellison House in New Windsor, the Thomas Ellison House, which no longer exists. It was overlooking the river, where he began what ended up being the final campaign, a joint French and American effort to march from here to Yorktown, where they defended Cornwallis. Not able to end the war quite yet, and needing to protect the Hudson River from the British in New York City, Washington and his 7,000 remaining troops, as well as a contingent of the French army under Rochambeau, returned to the Newburgh area, where they negotiated peace with the opposition, meaning the British in New York, and equally they had to negotiate peace with their own angry, tired, and unpaid troops. In 1783, Washington personally quelled an officer's mutiny at the New Windsor Cantonment, and he then spent the remaining months here focused on ensuring that civil war did not follow the revolution. As he handed over military control to the politicians, he spent months writing about political aspirations for the new nation, and especially advocating for his own men, so that they would be well compensated for their sacrifices over the 8 long years of war. So, to pull it back together, in the end, the natives' fears in regard to the frontier battles, what Grant was really fighting for, were in 1779, were very rational. When war concluded and Congress's finances were in turmoil, the compensation plan to pay the American officers ended up including land patents for the interior of New York State. So in fact, a lot of this land was cut up and given to different generals, including Baron von Steuben, who ended up settling in that area. So, like I said, this is a crossroads, and many of these locations that have been mentioned just in this few minutes still exist today. You can visit the battlefield, of course, at Minisink, which is up in Sullivan County, Fort Decker, Washington's headquarters in Newburgh, the Windsor Cantonment, Knox's headquarters, which is one of the Ellison homes, Fort Montgomery, Stony Point, and West Point, Fishkill across the river. They're trying to preserve the battlefield, the supply depot there. And even here we have our own effort to save the Hathorne House in Warwick, which still exists and is currently involved in a big preservation effort. So it's all around us, and it's something that is very worthy of a commemoration like this and a remembrance, because these small battles don't get remembered except for by the local communities that were involved, and in some cases descended from the people who fought them. In conclusion, I'd like to present a certificate from the county executive. He unfortunately couldn't be here today, but he's asked me to present this to the Daughters of the American Revolution for commemorating this event. It's a home, and the current owner doesn't want to see it fall into the wrong hands. She doesn't want to see the property destroyed in any way, so she's involved with a group of local historians who are trying to purchase the home and open it as something. They know they can't sustain it as a museum, so they're thinking maybe a bed and breakfast or something that they can do there. But that's an effort that's underway, and they do need support, so that's something to be involved in. I don't know the road that it's on. I've been down there, but I don't remember the name of the road. Yeah, it's in Warwick, and it's got a historic marker on it. But and you can contact the group, and they'll open it up, I'm sure, because they're welcoming anybody who would like to help.
Any other questions?
I want to thank you so much.